Hello everyone, welcome to another video. Today we are going to continue with our saga of mythology. I know that we started a new, slightly more dramatic saga last time, but this time we are back to the OG Golden Book, and this time around we are going to read the section of Northern Europe, gathering all the mythology from, Denmark, Germany, Ireland, Scotland, etc. And we are going to start with a very fancy story about dragons. Because who doesn't like dragons? As you may see, I am wearing my glasses today. I have arrived to the conclusion that if I have to read a book in the dark with the light beaming into my face, my blindness is very much, increased to a point that I need assistance, and I've been using like a mirror to reflect light. Now I have this like reading light. Let's hope that helps, plus my glasses. But here we go. When the worm comes to the water, smite him in the heart. Sigurd, the dragon slayer. Sigurd, Farni's Bane, was one of the most popular legendary human heroes in Norse mythology and the central character of the saga of the Volsungs, which was written down in Iceland around 1260 CE. Sigurd was the posthumous son of the hero Sigmund, the son of the king Volsung, from whom the saga takes its name, and was fostered in Regin, a highly skilled dwarf smith. One day, Regin told Sigurd the story of the otter's ransom, a pile of gold the Aesir gods paid to Regin's father Hreidmar, king of the dwarves, as compensation for killing Regin's brother, Otter. At the time, Otter had been in the form of the creature bearing that name. What? Anyway, the gold, however, had been cursed by its original owner, the dwarf Andvari, after the trickster Loki forced him to give up a gold ring to complete the ransom. I guess all of them are connected between one another, because obviously we are seeing here some familiar names from Norse mythology. I guess it's all Norse mythology, right? Inumi, Otter's curse unfolds. Regin's brother Farnir murdered his father to get the gold and turned into a dragon to guard it. Regin also wanted the treasure, so he urged Sigurd to kill Farnir, plotting to murder the hero afterwards. To ensure Sigurd's success, Regin forged a magical sword, Gram, and gave it to him. After killing Farnir, Sigurd accidentally drank some of the dragon's blood, gaining the ability to understand the speech of birds. From them he learned the Regin's treacherous intentions and beheaded him, of course, taking the gold for himself. As the new owner of the cursed treasure, Sigurd was now doomed as well. Having proved himself a great warrior, Sigurd became betrothed to the Valkyrie Brynhild. However, he forgot Brynhild after drinking a potion from Queen Grimhild. who wanted the treasure for her family, and he married Grimhild's daughter, Gudrun, instead. Gunnar, Gudrun's brother, then saw Sigurd's help in winning the hand of Brynhild, whose hall was protected by a ring of magic fire through which only Sigurd could pass. Made to switch forms with Gunnar, Sigurd wooed the Valkyrie for his brother-in-law. But Brynhild was enraged to learn that she had been deceived and ordered Gunnar to kill Sigurd. Gunnar's brother Guttorm agreed to do the deed, and fatally wounded Sigurd at the cost of his own life. Heartbroken, Brynhild threw herself on Sigurd's funeral pyre. Gunnar alone avoided treasure's curse by abandoning the gold in the cave. Okay, so they were all fighting for the gold, but then the gold resulted in their demise. The tragic situation. But again, we had the dragon. Although the dragon is related to the gold, it was very shortly mentioned. But here we have a slightly longer description of dragons in myths. Common in many mythologies, dragons are serpent-like, often winged reptilian creatures capable of breathing fire or venom. In Indo-European stories, dragons are usually malign creatures, eventually killed by divine or human heroes. In Vedic Hinduism, for example, the dragon Vritra, a personification of drought, is slain by the god Indra. In Norse mythology, the god Thor kills the world encircling Midgard serpent. Oh no! Why? A dragon-slain hero. If you remember the story, like there's a serpent, there's a tree, okay? There's a tree, Yggdrasil. In the bottom of Yggdrasil, there's a snake, and then at the top there's a bird. And in between, through up and down the tree, there's a squirrel who runs up and down and tells like bad stories about the bird to the snake and about the snake to the bird, so they are enemies but can't never see each other. Why would you kill the snake? Anyway, a dragon-slaying hero appears in Near Eastern mythologies, including the story of the Babylonian god Marduk slaying the sea dragon Tiamat. Tiamat is not a sea dragon, she is the chaos itself, a primordial goddess. The creature also features in early Christian stories, such as that of Saint George and the dragon, where the dragon becomes a symbol of Satan. In contrast, the dragons of Chinese mythology are revered beneficent creatures associated with authority, power, and wisdom. They possess powers over natural forces, especially those to do with water. They can control rain, tsunamis, and floods. There we go. Anyway, next story we have wonderful, the magic Sampo. Plenty does it bring to Northland, the Kalevala. I feel like this is going to be something slightly different. Okay, we barely started and my voice is giving up on me already. What is this? Let's see if I can survive. Or how long I can survive. The poems of Kalevala, Land of Heroes, were compiled by folklorist Elias Lonrod in the mid-80s. He wove together the numerous myths and legends of the Karelian and Finnish people, most of which have never before been written down. The poems formalized in printed form became the definitive Finnish epic at the time when Finland's culture and language were under threat, with the nation's declaration of independence from Russia still decades away. The poems explore the themes of creation, heroism, sorcery, violence, death, and concern, among other things, and struggles of the heroes to acquire the legendary Sampo, a mysterious talisman which gave its owner endless prosperity. The Kalevala recounts the adventures of Vainamoinen, the first man, the blacksmith, Ilmarinen, and the warrior Lemminkainen. It begins with the story of creation, when the goddess Ilmatar lay down in the sea heavily pregnant, but bemoaning that she could not yet give birth. There a bird laid 7 eggs on her knees, and when she moved the eggs fell and broke, and the pieces formed the world. For a time, Ilmatar was preoccupied with her creations, but after 700 years of pregnancy, she gave birth to the first man, the fully formed Vainamoinen. How did she give birth to the first man? Asexual reproduction. Old and wise from birth, the hero is usually depicted with the white hair and beard. Anyway, the first challenge. Vainamoinen wove magic spells with his singing. Word of his skill traveled to Bahjola, far from to the north, where a young minstrel named Youkahainen, oh my god, was consumed by envy. He challenged, but if the the person with the difficult name was the first man, then where is the second person with the difficult name is coming from? Okay. He challenged Vainamoinen to a singing match, but when he lost, he sank into a swamp. Panicking, he offered Vainamoinen his sister Aina's hand in marriage, in exchange for saving his life. But when Youkahainen returned home and told his sister, she drowned herself at the idea of marrying such an old man. Decisions. After this, Vainamoinen set out to woo another woman, the maiden of Pohjola, whose mother, Louhi, ruled the country. Youkahainen lay in the wait with a poisoned crossbow, intent upon avenging his sister's death, and shot Vainamoinen into the sea. He was saved by Louhi, who promised to return him to Kalevala and give him her daughter's hand if he created the Sampo, a magical artifact. Vainamoinen offered to send the blacksmith Ilmarinen to forge the Sampo and hurried home. On his way, however, he met the maiden herself and proposed to her. She agreed, but said that first he must complete a list of seemingly impossible tasks, while carving a wooden boat from a spindle. The last of the tasks, Vainamoinen cut his knee with an axe and was unable to complete the task. Ilmarinen's refusal. Returning home, Vainamoinen discovered that the smith Ilmarinen was unwilling to travel to Pohjola and forge the Sampo. As a result, he summoned a stormy wind to blow Ilmarinen there, and the smith made the Sampo out of white swan feathers, the milk of the greatest virtue. Greatest virtue can be milked. a single grain of barley, and the finest lamb's wool. The epic never clearly defines the sample. However, based on the description of its purpose to grind flour and produce salt and gold, it is thought to be a mill. When Louhi got the sample, she shut it inside a hill of rock and sent Ilmarinen home without the maiden. Promises were broken immediately, raised from the dead. Meanwhile, the warrior and the adventurer Lemminkainen set off to Pohjola, but not before leaving a magic comb with his mother. If he died, the comb would supposedly drip blood. When Lemminkainen arrived, he also set his sights on the maiden of Pohjola. But is Pohjola a person or a place? To win the maiden, Louhi set him 3 tasks: to catch the demon's elk, bridle the demon's horse, and kill the swan of Tonella, the land of the dead. Alas, Lemminkainen was killed by the herdsman, who scattered his body parts in the river. At that moment, the comb he left behind dripped with blood. His mother rushed to Pohjola. Okay, so Pohjola is a place. Got it. And brought him back to life by reassembling his body, anointing it with an ointment acquired from the gods, and chanting magic spells. Okay, I thought that we were reading about the gods. Anyway, a second contest. Vainamoinen and Ilmarinen then competed for the hand of Louhi's daughter, who preferred the young blacksmith to the wise old man. Before he could marry the maiden, Ilmarinen had to perform 3 impossible tasks: plowing a field of vipers, hunting the bear of Tonella and the wolf of Manala, and fishing the great pike from the Tonella River. He completed the task, and wedding feast ensued. Only Lemminkainen was not invited to the feast. Furious at the snub, he decided to settle the score by challenging Louhi's husband to a duel. Why can't you people just chill? Just chill. Stop killing each other at every opportunity. Okay, after a singing contest, and a sword fight, Lemminkainen killed the man and fled to an island full of beautiful women. What's the point? Like, seriously. Stealing the sample. The 3 heroes were reunited much later, after Ilmarinen's wife was killed. Hearing of the wealth that the sample had brought to Pohjola, the men decided to sail there to steal it. On the way, their boat collided with a giant pike, which Vainamoinen killed. From its jaw, he created a kantele, a type of harp, which only he could play. The magic instrument had the power to enchant all living things. Using it, he charmed the people of Pohjola to sleep, and his companions rode away with the sample. As the 3 men fled, Louhi awoke and used her powers to send obstacles to block their path. The heroes survived, but the kantele was lost to the water. Transformed into a giant bird of prey, Louhi gave chase to the hero's boat, and during the battle, the sampo too fell from the boat. It sank to the bottom of the sea, where it broke into pieces. Scattered in the depths of the sea, they produced salt, and Louhi was left with only 1 lid. What? In retaliation, Louhi sent 9 plagues to the people of Kalevala, with Vainamoinen but Wainamoinen cured them. She sent a bear to attack their cattle, but he defeated it. Louhi then hid the sun and the moon inside a hill and took the gift of fire from them. Wainamoinen fought the people of Pohjola, but eventually asked Ilmarinen to forge keys to the mountain of Pohjola to release the sun and the moon. Relenting, Louhi finally set the sun and moon free. Nice and short. Apparently the next story is already about a different group of people. The Dagda was 80 years in the kingship of Ireland. There we go. A complex god. The Dagda acted as both father god and provider for the Tuatha De Danann, a race of divine beings who were the mythical inhabitants of Ireland before the Celts. Before the Celts or before the Celts? Okay, you know what? I take it back. It is Celts for sure. Embarrassing. Children of the goddess Danu, they settled there in the 9th century BCE and brought talismans with them, including the Dagda's cauldron, an enormous, endlessly replenishing source of food and drink, a god with two sides. While the Dagda's name meant the good god, his portrayal is more complex. He was celebrated for his wisdom, magical powers, and physical powers, but also depicted as a crude comic figure whose tunic was too short. Along with his cauldron of plenty, he was known for carrying a magical club. One end killed people, and the other brought them back from the dead, emphasizing his life-giving powers. The Dagda was a fearsome fighter all his life thanks to a hearty diet of porridge. He was also helped by one of his many lovers, the Morrigan, a goddess who could influence the outcomes of the battles by her presence. Very convenient. However, the Dagda's 80 years reign ended after the Tuatha De Danann fought the Battle of Mag Tuired against the divine but monstrous Fomorians. There, the Dagda died of a dart of gore, a javelin thrown by a woman named Kathleen, who was the wife of Balor, the king of Fomorians, and also a prophetess. The end. Why couldn't they have developed a bit more? Anyway, next chapter is, as soon as he touched the earth, he was a heap of ashes. The Voyage of Bran. Maybe it continues, we don't know. Bran was a legendary Irish... Okay, so it is continuing. Great. A legendary Irish hero who went in search of an otherworldly paradise. He learned of this place from an unnamed woman in strange garb who appeared in his palace. She mesmerized Bran and his court by singing about a distant isle, a place where sorrow and evil were unknown and where there was an abundance of beautiful maidens. Of course, because, who cares about anything else? But obviously maidens have to be there. Beautiful maidens, excuse me. Inhumin, the land of women. The next day, Bran set off by sea with his men to search for this wonderful land. On the way, he met a figure in a chariot who came towards him across the waves. Named Manannan, the mysterious charioteer sang to Bran, telling him about his journey and a future son who was destined to be a hero. He also said that Bran would soon reach the land of women. So there were no women in Ireland before that? I mean, we just read that this woman killed the main god with the dart. When they arrived At the land of women, Bran was pulled to shore by a strand of yarn thrown to him by a leader of the women. He and his man were greeted with loving hospitality and a bed for every couple. Suspicious. One of the men, Nechtan, eventually grew homesick and encouraged the others to return to Ireland with him. The women's leader warned them, however, that if they did so, they should not land. When their ship drew near to their homeland, no one recognized Bran and his men or knew who they were, and as so many years had passed, Nechtan, not heeding the women's warning, jumped ashore and turned to ash. Bran's ship sailed away, never to be heard of again. Interesting. I wonder what this island of land of women they went to, that it took so long, and then once they came back, they turned to ashes. Very interesting story. Again, very sad that it's just that, like no development, no nothing. Okay, let's continue with our short and fast. One will be long forgetting. Cuchulainn, a cattle raid of Cooley. The Tain Bo Kuai what? Lunge. In English? Is it in English? What kind of English? The cattle raid of Cooley, right, was the longest and the most important tale from the group of texts known collectively as the Ulster Cycle. The story focused on the exploit of, Cuchulainn, a young Ulster warrior and one of the greatest heroes of Celtic mythology. The tale opened, so we are still in Ireland, thank goodness. The tale opened with a contest between a wife and her husband. The goddess Medb, queen of the province of Connaught. Connaught? My pronunciation is great. And Ailill, Ireland's king, arguing about which of them was wealthier. Medb discovered that it was Ailill, for he owned a white horned bull with supernatural powers. Refusing to be beaten, Queen Medb decided to find the only other magical bull in the land, Dún, the brown bull of Cooley. Dún's owner would not surrender the bull, so Medb and Ailill invaded Ulster in order to steal the animal. On the eve of the battle, Medb learned that all the warriors of Ulster were mysteriously ill and unable to fight, except for the 17-year-old called Cuchulainn. Medb rejoiced that her victory would be easily accomplished, but a prophetess foretold, "I see very red, I see red." The next day, a bloody battle ensued. Victory against the odds. Medb watched as Cuchulainn, transformed by a warp spasm into a terrifying giant, slaughtered her troops one by one. The goddess continued to send the best soldiers in the land to fight him, but they were no match to the boy. His deadly spear could shoot 24 darts, able to pierce every body part. At the height of the battle, Cuchulainn found himself locked in the three-day combat with a former friend, Ferdiad, an Ulsterman in exile in Connaught. Cuchulainn emerged victorious but exhausted. He was unable to go on. The Ulster warriors then woke from the spell and had laid them low and forced Medb and her troops to retreat. The death of Cuchulainn. Despite losing in battle, Medb managed to capture Dún, the brown bull of Cooley. The two bulls were then set against each other, and Ailill's white horn bull was killed. Mortally wounded, Dune found his way back to Cooley, but died when he got there. My God. Mad's pursuit had caused carnage and death throughout the kingdom, yet she could not accept defeat. She convinced the sons of those slain by Cuchulainn to seek revenge. Among them was Blodeuwedd, the king of Munster, whose father had perished in the battle. The men conspired to kill Cuchulainn, and Blodeuwedd threw the fatal spear. Cuchulainn washed his wound and drank water in the nearby lake. Barely able to stand, but refusing to die laying down like an animal, he tied himself to a standing stone and then died. His enemies feared him too much to get close enough to see if he was still alive. 3 days later, the goddess Morrigan appeared as a raven, a Celtic symbol of death, on Cuchulainn's shoulder, confirming he was dead. That's a cool way to go. Like, I'll be scary even in death. A hero's legacy. The fact that Cuchulainn's story is still widely told to this day is testimony to the Irish people's empathy with their hero. During the 20th century, he came to represent defiance in the face of British rule. Ulster Unionists, however, prefer to focus on his defense of the province of Ulster from enemies to the south. And we have here a small reference to the Hound of Cuchulainn. Originally named Setanta, Cuchulainn was the nephew of King Conor of Ulster and possibly the son of the sky god Lu, like in Hugh, but with an L, Lu. He earned his new name when, as a boy, he attended a banquet with his uncle at the house of the blacksmith Cuchulainn. Having lagged down behind on the way to the banquet, when he finally arrived at the house, Setana found himself facing Cuchulainn's ferocious guard dog. When it attacked him, Setana killed the hound in self-defense. To make amends to Cuchulainn, Setana promised to take the dog's place as protector of the kingdom of Ulster. He then became known as the Cuchulainn, Hound of Cuchulainn. Cuchulainn was a truly formidable foe, but his skills as a warrior eventually led to his undoing. Before he married a Scottish woman, Aoife bore him a son in secret. Years later, a young man appeared and challenged Cuchulainn. Only after defeating the stranger did Cuchulainn realize he had killed his own son. Distraught, he was a broken man when he met his death at the hands of the Blodeuwedd, the king of Munster. Next, we have a story that I have heard before, and you have definitely seen pictures about it, but he has the name of being the strongest and bravest man in Ireland, Finn MacCool and the Giant's Causeway. In Celtic mythology, the creation of Northern Ireland's natural wonder known as the Giant's Causeway was the result of a conflict between two giants. The rivalry in question was between the Irish giant Finn MacCool, who lived in Ulster with his wife Una, and a Scottish giant called Benandonner, who taunted him from across the sea. Finn, who was normally a peaceful person, normally peaceable, grew so angry that he grabbed a huge clod from the ground to fling at Benandonner. He missed. The clump of earth landed in the Irish Sea, forming the Isle of Man, while the hole it left formed Lough Neagh. I bet I just butchered that. Lonea. Finn then constructed a causeway of stone so he could cross the sea and fight Benandoner. But as he traversed the bridge, Finn caught sight of his would-be opponent. The Scottish giant was truly enormous and far larger than Finn. Fearing that he would be defeated, Finn fled back to Ireland and hid in his home. Such was his hustle that he left one of his boots stuck in the ground. A boot-shaped rock can still be seen today. With Benandoner in hot pursuit, Finn's situation appeared dire. Fortunately, his wife devised a plan. I already know the story. In plain sight, Una baked iron griddles inside loaves of bread and made some cheese curds. She then constructed a giant cradle and told Finn to lie in it. Benandoner found their house and Una invited him in. When Ben, I'm gonna call him Ben. Finn and Ben, great. When Ben demanded to see Finn, Una replied that her husband was out when in fact he was lying quietly in the cradle, disguised as a baby. The Scottish giant settled down to wait. Una offered him a loaf of bread. As he bit into it, the iron griddle inside broke 2 of his teeth. When he complained of its tautness, Una replied that she was only serving him what Finn always ate. His pride insulted, Ben tried another loaf and shattered 2 more of his teeth, roaring in pain. Una chided him for being weak, saying that her baby regularly ate the same loaves. She handed Finn one she had baked without the griddle inside. To Ben's surprise, Finn was able to eat it easily. Running scared. Una then challenged Ben to show his strength by squeezing water out of the white stone. Try as he might, it was impossible. The disguised Finn then took the stone secretly swapped it for a cheese curds Una had made. When he squeezed them, clear way ran down his hands. Stunned by this display of strength, Ben reached into the baby's mouth to test the sharpness of his teeth, and Finn savagely bit down on his little finger. Ben was now alarmed. If the baby was so large and strong, his father would surely be even more fearsome. Terrified, Ben fled the house before Finn could return and find him. Such was Ben's fear of Finn that he deliberately smashed the crossing between Ireland and Scotland, creating what is now known as Giant's Causeway. I already knew that story because I was told it when I went to Isle of Skye. So there's a kind of like a similar formation. It's not like a stair, it's not like stairs, but on the side it's called like a something kilt, because the rocks look like the kilt, like with the folding and everything. But if you look closely, the rock's formation is very similar to the Giant's Causeway. So our guide mentioned this story. So the giant from Scotland was the giant from Isle of Skye, and again, both of the locations were connected by this bridge. But obviously, when a much bigger giant, Scottish giant, fooled by the Irish smaller giant, was running away, he destroyed it because he was so scared. I think it's a funny story and very cute. Okay, next we have, so they took the blossoms and produced from them a maiden, Blodeuwedd. In ancient Welsh mythology, Blodeuwedd, meaning flower-faced, was the wife of the great hero Llewellyn. I never was so certain that I butchered something as I am this time. She was not a real woman, but was instead made from the flower of bloom, meadowsweet, and oak by the magician Math and Gwydion. Oh, Gwydion, like a band. Blodeuwedd was a key figure in the math fab Mathonwy, a book full of magic and invention, which was the last of the mythical four branches of the Mabinogi. Llewellyn could only marry with the help of magic or divine intervention due to tainted or cursed applied to him by his own mother, Arianrhod. She was embittered at the loss of her virginity. Of which the presence of her son was a constant reminder. Arianrhod was also angered by a series of tricks and humiliations she was subjected by Math and his nephew Gwydion. As a result, she placed 3 curses upon Llew, and the last of which stated that he would never have a wife from any race on the earth. However, the cunning Math and Gwydion eventually managed to break this last curse by magic. They created Blodeuwedd and betrothed her to Llew. The couple were married and given a place to live in together. Love at first sight. One day, while her husband was away on business, a man pursuing a stag arrived at Blodeuwedd's home. He was Gron W. Pebir, Lord of Penlyn. My gosh. Being of a charming and hospitable disposition, Blodeuwedd welcomed the visitor. However, as soon as they looked into each other's eyes, the pair fell in love. After this, the couple commenced an affair, and determined to be together, they began to plot the death of Llew. There was one major obstacle, though, for the lovers: Llew's immortality. Blodeuwedd's betrayal. There seemed to be no way in which Blodeuwedd's husband could be killed. He had previously told her that he could not be killed during a day or night, nor indoors nor outdoors, neither riding nor walking, nor clothed nor naked, nor by lawfully made weapon. However, Blodeuwedd soon tricked Llew into giving away the secret, and he revealed to her that he could be killed at dusk, wrapped only in a net, with one foot on a thraw and one on the goat, beside a river bank, and by a special spear forged for 1 year during the hours when everyone should be at the mass. Armed with this information, Blodeuwedd arranged for Llew's demise. She and Gron prepared an ambush, but things did not go to plan. When Gron threw the spear, it hit Llew, wounding him but not killing him. In that split second, Llew turned himself into an eagle and flew away. Gwydion, Llew's father, eventually discovered the severely wounded eagle perched high up on the oak tree. Realizing that the bird was Llew, he transfigured his son back into human form. Gwydion and Math then nursed Llew back to health, before mustering an army to take back his lands from Gron and Blodeuwedd. The latter fled, but Gwydion hunted her down and turned her into an owl. He told her that she would never see the light of day again and would be alone for eternity. Her name would be forever Blodeuwedd, which in the modern Welsh language now simply means owl. And I am going to finish the Northern Europe section with the legend of King Arthur. King Arthur was a semi-historical status as the warlord who ruled Britain during a period of chaos created by the departure of Roman forces from Britain. The Welsh Christian monk Nennius, who wrote the Historia Britonum, History of Britons, in circa 828 CE, was the first to mention Arthur, writing about him as the victorious leader of the 12 battles that culminated in one at Mount Badon in 490 CE against the invading Angles, Jutes and Saxons. The cleric Geoffrey of Monmouth later included a wily warrior King Arthur in his Historia Regum Britanniae, History of the Kings of Britain, 1136 CE, in which the king conquered Denmark, Iceland, Norway, Gaul, and more. The Arthurian legend enjoyed a surge of popularity in the 12th century thanks to the Queen of England, Eleanor of Aquitaine, who was inspired by the romantic stories of knights and chivalry to bring troubadours into her court to tell Arthurian tales. One of the most famous contributions to the legend came from Thomas Mallory, who wrote his version from inside London's Newgate prison. Mallory based his 1485 work La Morte d'Arthur, The Death of Arthur, on such sources as the alliterative Morte Arthure, a Middle English poem from 1400 CE. The Vulgate Cycle, a series of 13th century French romances, and the works of the poet Chrétien de Troyes. Fateful conception. La Morte d'Arthur was split into 21 books by printer William Caxton in 1485. The first concerns the events that led to Arthur becoming King of Britain. Fate dedicated every aspect of Arthur's life, even his conception, which was aided by the dark arts of the wizard Merlin. Arthur's father, King Uther Pendragon, had been obsessed with Igraine, a wife of Cornish duke named Gorlois. To avoid Arthur's advances, Igraine hid in Tintagel Castle, on a precipice on the Cornish coast. Merlin struck a deal with Arthur. He would make Arthur look like Gorlois and spirit him into Igraine's chamber if Uther agreed to hand over the foretold child of the union to Merlin to raise him as he saw fit. The deed was done, and according to Mallory, Arthur was conceived 3 hours after Gorloin's death in battle. As the widow of Igraine then married Uther, this meant that Arthur could later claim legitimacy. Just as Uther had agreed, he gave the baby to Merlin, who took Arthur away to be raised by Sir Ector, a true and faithful knight, with a son, Kay, about Arthur's own age. Arthur was raised ignorant of his parentage, which later proved his undoing. Arthur lasted after and eventually slept with King Lot's wife, Margause. Margise, I'm gonna call her Margise, who was also the daughter of Ingrain and Gorloin. Oh gosh. With this affair, Arthur committed conscious adultery but also unconscious incest. Their union led to the conception of a bastard son, Mordred, who Merlin had prophesied would destroy Arthur and all his knights. The Sword in the Stone. Despite being Uther's son, Arthur did not become king through a simple process of succession. Instead, Arthur had to prove his worth. According to Malroy, one day after the death of Uther, a great stone of 4 square feet appeared in a London churchyard, with a steel anvil in the middle of it. A fine sword was stuck in the anvil, and the blade was inscribed with the gold letters that read, "Whoso pulleth out his sword of this stone and anvil is a right-wise king born of all England." It was destined to be taken from the stone only by the true king. The Archbishop of Canterbury called for a tournament, hoping that this would shine some light on who is the rightful king. Even the strongest man could not withdraw the sword from the anvil. Many knights, including Acton's son, Sir Kay, went to London hoping to prove their worth. Upon arrival, however, Kay lost his sword and sent Arthur to fetch another. Noticing the sword in the stone, but unaware of its significance, Arthur easily pulled the blade from the anvil. After proving several times that he could withdraw the sword, Arthur was hailed as the rightful king of Britain. The sword in the stone was not the only famous blade in the tale of Arthur. The sword named Excalibur, I thought that was the same sword. Okay, appears in many of the Arthurian legends, with some suggesting this was the very sword he pulled from the anvil. In Melroy's tale, Arthur was given the sword by the Lady of the Lake. After seeing the magical sword and scabbard in the middle of the lake, raised up by an ethereal hand, Arthur promised the lady a future gift in exchange for those. Grail Quest. Books 13 and 17 of Malroy's account contains the quest of Arthur and his knights for the Sangreal, or Holy Grail. This aspect of the Arthurian legend was a popular subject in medieval French accounts, such as the Vulgate Cycle. Mallory based this information on the Holy Grail and a story of the Holy Grail on a story from this cycle, La Questa del Saint Graal, the quest of the Holy Grail. According to this account, the Grail appeared on the Round Table during the Christian feast of Pentecost, which celebrates Christ's disciples being endowed with the Holy Spirit. The Grail brought forth food and drink for all those assembled before it, disappearing again. Arthur and his knights then dedicated themselves to searching for the Grail. Tragic romance. The Round Table was a wedding gift from King Leodegrance to Arthur, who married the king's daughter Genevieve. This table is a key element of the legend. During Pentecost, King Arthur gathered his chosen knights in Camelot, his castle and court, and granted them seats at the Round Table in exchange for their fealty. Each knight swore an oath promising never to take up arms in wrongful quarrel for the sake of love or worldly goods. Despite this, many of the books of the La Morte d'Arthur contain tales of quarrels over love, which often ended in tragedy. This was the case of Sir Tristan, who loved his belle Isolde and was eventually killed by her husband, a king. The most famous romance in the legend is that between Genevieve, Arthur's wife, and his best knight, Sir Lancelot du Lac. The pair had an affair, but were so indiscreet that many schemed to expose their adultery to the king, including Arthur's bastard son, Mordred. Once the affair was exposed, the king was forced to declare war on Lancelot, thus dividing the Round Table as he pursued his own knights back to France. However, while Arthur fought in France, Mordred usurped his throne. This treason reunited Arthur and his knights. The death of Arthur. As its title suggests, La Morte d'Arthur ends with Arthur's death. Arthur and Mordred wounded each other fatally at the Battle of Camlan. As they lay dying, the wounded king ordered Sir Blodeuwedd to throw Excalibur into the lake. When he did so, up rose an arm of the Lady of the Lake, who waved a weapon 3 times before she disappeared again. Bedivere carried Arthur to the lake, where he was met by the woman in black hoods, who took Arthur away in a boat. Mallory left it open as to whatever the once and future king might one day return. And as the last part of Northern, Europe mythology, we have the 12 knights of the Round Table, who were Lancelot du Lac, Geraint, Gareth, Gaheris, Tristan, Gawain, Bors de Ganis, Galahad, Kai, Bedivere, Lamorak, Percival, and Arthur. Okay, and that concludes this video and the entirety of Northern mythology. Some of it was very short, most of it was very short, including the story of Arthur that we just read. Either way, I think that it was still great. I highly enjoyed the reminder about the 2 giants, Scotland and Ireland. Anyway, and now I kind of want to rewatch, any movie about Arthur as well. So there we go. And yes, also Tristan and Isolde. It is a very sad story, and I do remember watching a movie about it quite a while ago. I can't even remember who plays who, but yeah, I do know the story as well. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. It took me a while to film it. My camera was overheating, my throat was giving up, but I do believe we made it. Fingers crossed. That's why, I might look slightly different in some sections of the video because I have to move the camera, etc. Anyway, let's put that behind us and conclude here. Thank you so much for joining me today, as always, and I will see you next time. Bye!